Hi there! In this video, we're going to learn about synthetic division. So, what is synthetic division? We use this process, synthetic division, as an alternative to polynomial long division. In fact, it's one that I prefer, actually. Except the kicker is you can only use it when you have a linear factor. So a linear factor looks like this, x minus a number. So when you're dividing by something like x minus 2 or x plus 4. But this first term has to be an x. It can't be an x squared, it can't be an x cubed, it can literally only be x plus or minus a number. So the best way for me to show you how to do synthetic division is to just do a few problems. So I have 3 prepared for you to go over. So what we want to do is we want to find the quotient and the remainder. So when we use synthetic division, we set up a box. And on the outside of this box, by the way, we only use numbers here. We don't use any variables. So on the outside of this box, we put our linear factor. Now the linear factor is the opposite of what this is. So like if you were to set this equal to 0 and solve for x, we would subtract 3 from both sides and we would get x is equal to negative 3. Negative 3 would be my root. Would be what I'm dividing by. I want to know, I shouldn't say it would be my root. I should say negative 3, I want to know if it is a root. That's what we're trying to find. And what that means is when I do synthetic long division, do I have a remainder? That's really usually the goal of why we do this. But to practice, we take the opposite of what is in here. So then we have numbers that we put in our box. We only put the numbers, we do not put the variables, and we need to make sure that we have a space and a place for every exponent of your polynomial that you're dividing. So this would be, in your category, this would be like your x to the fourths. This is your x to the thirds. We're just using coefficients. X squared, x's, and constants. So I'm going to write the numbers, and I highlighted them for you, but I'm going to write in here 3, 10, 5, 6, and negative 4. First thing I do, I bring down my first number, 3. Now I take the number out in front, and I multiply it by this number here, and I write it in this space. So negative 3 times 3 gives me negative 9. Then I add these numbers together. 10 plus negative 9 is 1. Now I take negative 3 and I multiply it by 1. So I do negative 3 times 1 is equal to negative 3. I write it in this space. Then I add 5 plus negative 3 is 2. Now I take negative 3 and I multiply it by 2. And I write it in this space. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Then I add 6 plus negative 6 is 0. Then I take negative 3 times 0 and I write it in this space. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. And then I add negative 4 plus 0 is negative 4. So what this tells you now is the degree or the exponent of each one of your x values goes down. So now this represents your x to the third. This represents your x squared. This represents your x's, this represents your constants, and this represents your remainder. So when I write out my answer, this is now 3x to the third plus x squared plus 2x. I have no constants, so technically plus 0, which I don't have to write, minus when I have a remainder, I write down the remainder, and then I divide it by what I was originally dividing by up here. Goes here. So this becomes x plus 3. So my final answer would be this. You could write it this way, but remember you don't have to write the plus 0. If you don't write the plus 0, it's the same answer. And that's probably what you would see written as your answer. Let's try another one. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set up my box. Now, I have a space. This one is going to be for my x to the thirds. This one's going to be for my x squareds. This one's going to be for my x's. This one's going to be for my constants. And then out in front is what I'm dividing by, my linear factor. Remember, it's the opposite of what we have here. This says x minus 4, so the opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. The numbers that are going to go in, I have my green, I have my orange, and this one is actually my blue. So remember, this is your x to the thirds, this is your x squareds, this is your x's, and this is your constants. So here I'm going to write a 3, negative 11. I don't have any x's, but I have to leave a space for my x's because I might get them when I'm doing the division. So I just put a 0 here as a space holder. And negative 12. Okay, same process. I bring down my first number. I multiply 4 times 3, and I write it in the space. So I multiply these, and I write it here. So 4 times 3 is 12. Then I add together. Negative 11 plus 12 is 1. Then I multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. Then I add these together. 0 plus 4 is 4. Then I multiply. 4 times 4 is 16. Then I add these together and I end up with 4. Now your answer, remember, your exponents go down. So this represents x squared, x constants, remainder. So your answer would be 3x squared plus x plus 4 plus my remainder. My remainder is 4, but because I'm have some left over, I'm still dividing it by that. It didn't divide in evenly. So I still have to divide my remainder by what I was originally dividing by, in this case, x minus 4. So this is your final answer. Okay, last one. I want you to try and do this one on your own. So now is a really good time to pause the video, write out the whole problem, try it out, and then I'm going to go ahead and work the solution and kind of talk through it. So I'm going to write out my box here, and I have what I divide by here, and we're going to go x to the third, x squared, x's, constants. So x minus 3 means I'm really going to have a positive 3 here because it's showing as a minus 3. I have a negative 2 here. I don't have any x squareds, so here I'm going to write a 0. Here I have a 19, and here I have a negative 3. Whoops, I forgot to color that in. Okay, bring down the first one. I multiply my numbers together. 3 times negative 2 is equal to negative 6. I add them together. 0 plus negative 6 is negative 6. I multiply. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18, and I add these together. 19 plus negative 18 is 1. And I multiply. 3 times 1 is 3. I add these together, and I get 0. This one has a no remainder, which is usually what we're looking for. So when you get something like that, that means that this is a 0. And I know we're going to talk about this in another video, but this is a good thing. This is typically what you want when you're doing synthetic division, to get 0 for the remainder. So your final answer, remember this one started representing your x to the thirds, so now these have bumped down to x squareds, x's, constants, and remainders. So your final answer, negative 2x squared minus 6x plus 1. I don't have a remainder, so literally this is just what I get. Okay, so I hope that made some sense to you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. I'm happy to help you. But the biggest thing I can emphasize, really two things, is when you're dividing by your linear factor, remember it's the opposite of the number. That's x. If it's x minus something, you're dividing by a positive number. If it's x plus something, you're dividing by a negative number, the number out in front. And then make sure you leave a space if you don't have a representation for all of the exponents. So if you're not going down 3, 2, 1, 0 and you have no x squared, make sure you leave a space or you will get it wrong. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.